Mr. Chairman and members, House Bill number 606 provides relative to authorized uses of public funds, prohibits certain uses of public funds by institutions, boards, commissions, departments, agencies, officials, and employees of the state or its political subdivisions, prohibits entities that perform abortions from receiving public funding for any purpose, and provides for related matters.
Mr. Chairman, on your bill.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vice Chair. An exciting day today. It's actually pro-life day in the legislature in Louisiana today. I think we have 4 bills we're going to hear in our committee this morning. House Bill 606 is a pro-life bill actually initiated by Governor John Bel Edwards. It prohibits any entities in Louisiana that perform abortions from receiving public funding, state or federal or local funds for any purpose. This bill would not apply in instances in which the abortion is medically necessary or to prevent the death of the mother, or as in the case of rape or incest, but otherwise does apply in every situation. The bottom line, if an organization performs abortions, they may not receive public funding. We have some important folks here to explain the importance of this today.
Ms. Deanna Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and committee members. My name is Deanna Wallace, and I'm the Legislative Director for Louisiana Right to Life. I'm here today to tell you why the women of Louisiana deserve better than Planned Parenthood. First of all, as Alex mentioned, Louisiana women already have better options than Planned Parenthood. In addition to the 294 federally qualified public health centers that already serve millions of our citizens, Louisiana Right to Life has put together a list of alternative providers capable of providing Louisiana women in Baton Rouge and New Orleans with high-quality health care. And I'd love to present those lists to you when the Sergeant of Arms returns. When we originally published these lists, Planned Parenthood officials claimed in media interviews that there were massive wait times at these clinics and that they couldn't handle the women that need care. Louisiana Right to Life staff researched this claim and found that in reality, most of these clinics can handle appointments within a week or even a couple of business days. Simply put, Louisiana women have plenty of options for high-quality health care. We don't need Planned Parenthood in order to access contraceptives, STD testing, cancer screenings, or other gynecological services. Louisiana women also deserve better than an organization that has decreased actual healthcare services to women in order to gain more profits by increasing the number of abortions performed. For Planned Parenthood, abortion is a business, a very lucrative business. While other services Planned Parenthood offers have decreased, the number of abortions they have performed nationally have increased. Since 2005, abortions have increased by about 24%. Meanwhile, the number of cancer screening and prevention services have decreased by over 53%, and contraceptive services have fallen by 4%. Why? Maybe because the $150 million they make from abortions account for 49% of their non-governmental revenue. These statistics hold true in Louisiana as well. According to Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast annual reports, the number of individual patients they served in their 2 Louisiana clinics decreased by nearly 5% from 2013 to 2014. In addition to serving fewer patients, they also provided fewer total services to our residents. There was a 19.5% decrease in cervical cancer screenings, an 8% decrease in the number of STD testing, and an 8% decrease in the number of HIV tests and counseling services. While all of these services are going down, meanwhile on Claiborne Avenue, they're almost done constructing their 7,000 square foot abortion center, which, as Alex mentioned, they have said will sell 2,844 additional abortions to the New Orleans community. Now, the last DHH numbers had the number of abortions in Louisiana at 10,211. If we add the additional abortions that Planned Parenthood wants to sell in our state, that would increase our abortion rate by 28%. This is not what we need in Louisiana. Louisiana does not need more abortion, and Louisiana does not need more Planned Parenthood. We ask you to affirm the idea that Louisiana women deserve better by favorably passing this bill to the full House. Thank you.
Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. If you will, remain at the table. Representative Cox, do you have a question for? Okay, if you will.
Thank you all for coming. This is about making sure we don't have nobody getting abortions, and we're paying for it. Correct. Secondly, it also stops harvesting baby parts. Am I correct?
This bill doesn't directly deal with
I
that
know,
issue,
but I mean,
yes, as
If
Ms.
you
Cindy,
can't have abortions, you can't harvest, right?
right, as Ms. Cindy mentioned, the congressional panel on, I forgot what the exact title was, on babies, basically, they issued a report yesterday, an initial report indicating that they had found evidence that Planned Parenthood was selling fetal body parts for a profit.
They were profiting from
Yes.
the selling of.
And this stops that, right? At least in the state of Louisiana.
It would prevent Planned Parenthood from doing abortions
Well,
and
to a
still
certain
receiving
extent.
services
Okay, yeah, all
and
right.
still receiving funding.
Why do you, I think you alluded to the fact that you said they're not doing less cancer screenings, less STD screenings, less HIV screenings.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you know in the state of Louisiana that HIV, we're ranked, I don't know where we are today, we may be number 3 or 2, could even be number 1, because we have the number 1 and 2 states, cities, which is New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and they swap back and forth. So that's that I didn't know, and I appreciate the information. And this will, hopefully, some of this money could be used for something like that. And we're number 1 in, last time I checked, in syphilis. I didn't even know syphilis was still around, but a lot of things you learn when you stay here. So I think I applaud what you do. You come here to try to protect the most innocent of all people, and that is someone who is born. And now in our state, you can even take a baby and take it to the fire station. So we got several different routes that we can take. So I applaud what you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cox.
And we have another question from Representative Mike Johnson.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for the testimony. Thanks all of you. Delighted to celebrate Pro-Life Day at the capital of the most pro-life state in America. Hopefully we can keep it that way. Quick question on the legal front, since you're
Yes.
an attorney as well. The Hyde Amendment has been part of federal law for decades, right?
Yes.
And it's never been struck down by any court as imposing an undue burden on a woman's right to choose, right?
No, the courts, including the Supreme Court, have said that a state has an interest in promoting childbirth over abortion, that that's something they're allowed to do.
So I just wanted to be noted for the record, there's no constitutional impediment or legal problem with what's being proposed in this bill, so far as we know, right?
We don't believe so, no.
So it should be upheld if it's ever challenged in court, because again, we're merely cutting off the funding for the abortion procedure, and there's no intent in this bill, at least, to impose an undue burden on a woman's right to choose abortion, right?
Not at all. There's already no funding that's allowed for the abortion procedure, so this cutting off fundings for other issues would not affect that.
It's good to know that we're passing legislation that should be upheld and pass court muster. Just want to point that out for the record in case it's needed for litigation later. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we have another question from Representative Bagley.
Not a question, I just asked the committee to move favorably on this at the appropriate time.
Okay, so noted.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Chairman, members, this set of amendments is coded 3006-3006 is the code in the top right-hand corner. These have been distributed and are available online. It's a set of 2 amendments that read as follows. Amendment number 1 on page 2, line 5, delete either of. Amendment number 2 on page 2, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following, subparagraph C. An abortion performed when the pregnancy is diagnosed as medically futile. For purposes of this subparagraph, medically futile means that in reasonable medical judgment, the unborn child has a profound and irremediable congenital or chromosomal anomaly that is incompatible with sustaining life after birth. This diagnosis must be a medical judgment that would be made by a reasonably prudent physician who is knowledgeable about the case and the treatment possibilities with respect to the medical conditions involved. And this concludes the extent of the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, on your amendment.
The amendment, and actually it adds, there are, on page 2, there are 3 things. This, you still can do the abortion. 1, if it's medically necessary to prevent the death of the mother. The other, if it's a case of rape or incest. And then this one is if the baby is medically futile, there's no hope for the baby. So that is why we put that amendment in, adding it today. So that we present that to you for your, hopefully, your approval. And I would move on that amendment, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, seeing no questions, is there any opposition to the amendment? Seeing no opposition, so ordered.
I will do this briefly, but Representative Jackson just summed it up very well. That's what this bill does. It's very simple. Planned Parenthood is not mentioned in this bill, and they don't currently do abortions in Louisiana. If that continues to be the case, they will continue to get funding through Medicaid, and that's fine. I hope they do. That's not what this is about. This is saying if you do abortions, then you can't get any other funding. It's a very simple concept that we've gone into a lot of different details about this morning. So I appreciate your support.
And we had a motion earlier today from Representative Bagley to report favorably, and then that motion would be to report with amendments. Is that correct, Representative? Do you wish to report with amendments? There's been a motion made to report with amendments. Is there any opposition? Any opposition? No opposition, so ordered.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 606 is a pro-life bill initiated by Governor John Bel Edwards, and it prohibits any entities in Louisiana that perform abortions from receiving public funding, state or federal or local funds for any purpose. The bill would not apply in instances in which the abortion is medically necessary or to prevent the death of the mother, or in the case of rape or incest. Bottom line, if an organization performs abortions, they may not receive public funding.
Missouri Governor Mike Parson is expected this week to sign a law banning most abortions after the 8th week of pregnancy. This is part of a new wave of laws that have sparked protests and are meant to force a Supreme Court showdown on abortion rights. President Trump has signaled he believes the Republican-led effort may have gone too far. Here is Ed O'Keefe.
I feel strongly about it, and all of that is working its way through court.
President Trump today addressed the issue of abortion on his way to a campaign event in Pennsylvania. Once a supporter of abortion rights,
I am pro-choice in every respect.
Mr. Trump tweeted over the weekend that he strongly supports restricting abortion with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of a mother. That puts him at odds with conservatives pushing for measures like Alabama's new strict anti-abortion rights law. The state's Republican governor defended the bill today.
It underscores the sanctity of life that the people of Alabama value so highly.
But supporters waiting for the president at that campaign rally said they agree with him about Alabama's law.
I didn't agree with that. That was going just a little bit too far for me.
I agree with Trump. Incest, rape, and the life of the mom are the first three things.
8 states so far this year have passed laws limiting abortion rights. Alabama's goes the farthest, while 5 other states passed so-called heartbeat bills that ban abortions after 6 to 8 weeks of pregnancy. Nationally, most voters believe abortion should be available, and the issue has become a central focus of Democratic presidential campaigns.
Make no mistake about it. These laws are dangerous. They are regressive.
This is nothing short of an all-out assault on women's reproductive freedom.
Tomorrow, various abortion rights groups are planning what they call a National Day of Action. Rallies are scheduled to be held outside the U.S. Supreme Court and in cities stretching from California to Indiana and Florida. Major?
Ed O'Keefe, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Representative Glover offers up one page set of amendments 4784.
Representative Glover on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Members, I don't know anyone who is actually for abortion. I guess there may be some folks out there who may have some ties or some relationships that actually make them for abortion, but I don't know any of those folks. But I am for a woman's right to exercise agency over her body. I am for a woman's right to privacy. I also believe that if men could get pregnant, you'd be able to get an abortion at the barbershop along with a shave and a fresh haircut. Having said that, I know that there are changes that are coming, potentially. Those changes will limit what has heretofore been almost 50 years worth of settled law with regard to a woman's right to exercise her privacy in this regard. If that is going to come to an end, then, members, I believe that there should be at least 2 exceptions that should be afforded to women in the state of Louisiana. That one exception, or one of those 2 exceptions, should be in the case of incest, and the other case should be in the event of a rape. That's what the amendment does, and I would ask your favorable passage and would certainly entertain any questions that any of you might have.
There are no questions on the amendment. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Representative Emerson, on your objection.
Members, this one's tough. It's very tough. I think we all know that in here. The circumstances surrounding this are horrific, and I don't think there's anybody in here who would debate that. At the end of the day, the child is innocent in this situation. But I do realize there's no great outcomes, but the child is innocent in this situation. And actually, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I have something to read from Representative Pat Moore. She's been my roommate for 3 years, and you all know why she's not here right now. And you all know where she stands on this, because in her first session here, she came up to this well and she told us a very heartbreaking story, but also a joyful end to the story of her being here in front of us. And I spoke to her this morning on my drive here for about 30 minutes, and you've all had discussions with Representative Moore, and I was certainly extremely uplifted after it, especially 30 minutes of it. She was incredibly encouraging, and I really appreciate her, and I asked her permission to share this. I just want you all to know that, and she absolutely gave me her blessing to do that. So this testimony she gave in 2019, I know a lot of you weren't here, and I'm just going to read it exactly as she said it. I listened to the video, and I wrote everything down, and then I'm just going to add a quick little thing from her at the end. So I apologize, but as Representative Duplessis pointed out, this is a monumental thing. And so if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, I want to read from her. 61 years ago, my mother at the age of 14 gave birth to me. Back in 1958, you did not bring a child into this world out of wedlock, and this was not my mother's intent. And the father told my mother that when she told him that she was pregnant, just have an abortion. And it was really just devastating. To make a long story short, my mother went ahead and brought me into this world, and she could not take care of me because her little body was so little. But she gave me to my great-grandmother, and my great-grandmother took care of me. And now I'm standing in front of you all. I understand this amendment, and I hate to think if you were rape or incest, and my mother did not consent to this, that she had to go ahead and give birth to me. But I do know this, for a long period of time as a little child, I would see my biological mother. I used to look in her eyes and think she hated my guts. And for a long time, I thought that until she told me she loved me. And her life was upside down. She didn't get a chance to do some of the things she wanted to do. Some people in our family and in our church distanced themselves from her. So she went through something. But she went ahead and brought me into this world. And right before she died, she was in a deep coma, so the doctor told us to say our goodbyes. And the only thing I could tell her was that I was so glad that she allowed me to come into this world. I don't know if she heard me, but I think she did because a tear came down her cheek. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy if somebody had been raped. She gave me up to my great-grandmother, and I'm here in front of you all today. And I'm trying to figure out why the Lord has let me come so far. I just wanted to share this with you. Regardless of what decision you make, just search your heart. It's hard for me, but I will vote against this amendment because she brought me into this world. I asked Miss Pat if I could read that. She said absolutely yes. She said she had been praying over the weekend because she knew this bill was coming up. And she said she's really struggled, but she knows that her mother had courage and brought her into this world, and she knows that she had a purpose, and she knows that every child that is born this way does have a purpose. So again, I understand these circumstances are horrific, and it's not easy for me to stand up here and do this either, but I think that Miss Pat said it best, and she's with us today because of that. So I would ask you to stand against this amendment and give those children a chance at life.
Representative Duplessis, you had a question for Representative Glover? Representative Glover, you take a question?
Yes.
Representative Duplessis.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Representative Glover, I too want to thank you for bringing this amendment. I just had a question because earlier it was cited that I think 62% of voters voted for that recent amendment. Did you know that the majority of Louisianians support this exception?
I am aware of that. I don't know the exact percentage, but to my understanding, it is pretty substantial.
Okay, I have here that 59% strongly support an exception for rape and incest. Overall, we're looking at well up probably into the 70s, strongly support or somewhat support abortion rights in the case of rape or incest. Would you disagree with those numbers?
I could not. That's why I feel compelled to offer the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Duplessis.
Thank you, Representative Duplessis. No more questions on the amendments. Representative Glover to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Thank you, members, for the opportunity to be able to have this discussion. I feel it, the need to offer at least some response with regard to our wonderful friend and colleague, Representative Moore. I love her as much as each of you within this chamber. Over the time that she has been here, I've come to see her as a friend, as an example of courage and determination. And at this difficult time that she's in the midst of with regard to her husband, I pray for her like I know probably each and every one of you on a daily basis. And I am touched by her story, just like each and every one of you are. However, I would believe that I would be remiss if I did not at least point out a couple of things. Number one, in 1958, when Representative Moore's mother became impregnated at the age of 14, she didn't have a choice, at least not a legal one, and not a medically safe one, because 1958 was still 15 years prior to the 1973 Roe decision. And so the only option that Representative Moore's mother could have availed herself of in 1958 as a young 14-year-old, I'm assuming probably economically poor teenager in northern Louisiana, would be an option that unfortunately I am fearful is going to return in great numbers if not only this bill is passed, but the Supreme Court does what it is that we all appear to anticipate that they will do, and that is avail themselves of the illegal and medically unsafe and medically unsupervised and non-medical doctor conducted abortion. That's the only way that could have happened in 1958. And so while I'm glad her mother chose not to avail herself of that option and gave us all the opportunity to be able to behold the blessing of Representative Moore, just as I said earlier, this is something that I think should be left up to the individual woman to decide in counsel with her God, her family, whoever it is that constitutes the bubble of privacy that she believes is her own. Because absent this amendment, in these two instances, young girls who will find themselves the victim of incest and rape will have to find themselves in the very same shoes that Representative Moore's mother was in. And while we know the great outcome of Representative Moore's mother, I can assure you, and if you're honest with yourselves, you know that there are example after example of young girls in 1958 who chose the other option. Some of those folks were lucky enough to survive those procedures. Unfortunately, some of them were not. And so I'm asking you, let us not return back to the days of back alley, illegal abortions in general. Because I am against the bill. I won't sit here and be intellectually dishonest with you and tell you that I will vote for this bill if this amendment ends up on it. I still think it's a bad bill. But at the very least, let us give those who have been raped or the victims of incest access to a medically safe and legal option. With that, I ask for your affirmative vote.
Representative Glover offers an amendment which Representative Emerson objects to. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All opposed will vote nay. The clerk will open the machine. Huval, nay. Desatel, nay. Boyer, nay. Mike Johnson, nay. Members, are you through voting? Clerk will close the machine. 37 yeas, 62 nays, and the amendment fails to be adopted. Back on the...
Representative Boyd for personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the vote is over, but I did want to express to you my concerns about incest and rape not being an exception to that bill. Many of you have daughters, granddaughters, nieces, cousins that are 9 years old that become young ladies. If they're a victim to incest or rape and become pregnant, you want a 9-year-old child whose average weight is about 60 pounds to carry a child, to experience gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, to experience possible postpartum depression. We have not done anybody any justice by passing that bill without those exceptions. Thank you.
House Bill 164. While we're waiting for Representative Boyd, Mr. Gonzalez, if you want to read the instrument to the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, this is House Bill 164 by Representative Boyd. It provides for exceptions to the abortion laws of this state relative to rape and incest.
Thank you. Representative Boyd, on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members. I am bringing HB 164, hoping that we can provide for exceptions for rape and incest to our current abortion ban. Most of you know from last year that I am the product of a 15-year-old. My sperm donor was 28 years old. We talk about being pro-life a lot, but in most cases, the victim is not cared for. The child that comes as a result of that struggles with health care, insurance, the victim with mental health issues. My mother, because no one took care of that 15-year-old, was deceased before she was 30 years old. Her way of dealing with her mental struggles internally led her to drugs to self-medicate, and before she was 30, she was gone. I looked today, and in my research over the last year, have found numerous stories with 9 and 10-year-old children. Rep. Moore and I discussed a 9-year-old in Baton Rouge who was raped, subsequently pregnant, a 12-year-old little girl who was a vibrant cheerleader. Her mother worked 3 jobs because of the abortion ban, and she was afraid of the person who raped her. Just quit the team and stayed at home for weeks, didn't go outside, subsequently pregnant. By the time her mother realized that she was already 6 weeks pregnant at the time. We have to do more for our children in this state. The thought of, and I think many of you probably have daughters, if not nieces, if not cousins. Picture them at 9, 10, 11 years old. Most likely, if they have been raped or assaulted by someone that they know. So you have a 9-year-old who's adjusting to the changes with her body, looking for solutions on the hormonal changes, and then to be violated. Again, most likely by someone that she knows. And then we want that baby to carry a baby to term. I'm hoping today that we could put the mind of the child, the right to that child's life, and take care of her. And I ask for your favorable passage today.
Mr. Gonzalez, is it my understanding there's an amendment on this bill that to put it in proper posture? If you could read the amendment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, this is Amendment Set 3918, and here's what it does. Amendments 1 and 2 make technical changes. Amendment 3 adds that the termination of a pregnancy that is the result of a sex offense against a victim who is a minor is not an abortion. Amendment 4 deletes lines 18 through 20 on page 1 and all of page 2 and inserts the following. It states that a victim in a case of pregnancy caused by an act constituting a sex offense shall provide the treating physician with reasonable documentation that the person seeking the pregnancy termination was a victim of a sex offense prior to the performance of the pregnancy termination. It provides for the placement of this documentation in the victim's medical file, and it defines the term reasonable documentation. And that's what this amendment set does.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt the amendment? We have a motion by Vice Chair LaFleur to adopt the amendment. Do we have any objections? Absolutely. Representative Boyd, do you want to discuss the amendment, please?
Yes, I had been contacted by someone regarding the original language in the bill of not needing anything to, I guess, prove that a rape has occurred. The amendment was something trying to establish whether it's the medical doctor or someone who can provide the file confirming that there was actually a rape.
Representative Horton, did that satisfy you on the amendment?
And I'll, Rep. Horton, I'll tell you, I'm thinking about like the 12-year-old that was raped, who clearly was raped, may have not reported it. She didn't even tell her mother initially. And I have copies of the story here, but I tried not to overload you guys because I sent you a couple of surveys as well yesterday. But I'm looking at that doctor can provide documentation to that.
And I guess that's where I have concern, and maybe this is what Representative Horton is getting to too. What is reasonable documentation? In our criminal statute, when have we ever used the word reasonable documentation, and what does that constitute? In your opinion, since you are the drafter, and I presume you were part of that amendment, Representative Boyd?
Yes. So I think I'll use my mother's situation. Clearly, that was statutory rape. She was 15. He was 28. If the doctor can confirm that she's pregnant, they can confirm who the pregnancy was by, I guess, that documentation. And again, my mother didn't have an option because I'm a 60s baby, but moving forward, I think the doctor can give documentation on whether or not a rape had occurred.
I don't know. I just object to the amendment because I just don't think it's, I just think it's too much to question. I'd rather, of course, debate on the merits of your bill as is, but.
So we have a motion by Vice Chair we have a motion by Vice Chair LaFleur to adopt the amendment. We have an objection by Representative Horton. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Representative Villio?
No.
No. Representative Adams? Representative Bacala?
No.
No. Representative Boyer?
No.
No. Representative Cox? Representative Fontenot?
No.
Representative Horton?
No.
No. Representative Knox?
Yes.
Yes. Representative LaFleur?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Moore? Rep Moore? Yes. Representative Ventrella? No. Representative Walters?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Wiley? No. 4 yeas, 7 nays.
So the bill will be in its original posture. The amendment will not be adopted. Representative Knox for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Boyd, thank you for bringing this bill. I know you brought it last year, and I hope as we have this discussion that someone would bring forth an amendment that would put it in a better posture, even if they really don't support the bill. That would be my hope. And however it turns out, my hope would be that you never stop bringing this bill. And let me tell you why, in the limited time that I have. As you know, and most of my colleagues know, I have been evolving on this issue, but what most people probably don't know is that you and I connect around this issue. I have a low tolerance, if no one has seen it yet, for these so-called men who violate women. I have less of a tolerance for a man who will sneakily force himself upon an innocent, vulnerable young girl and do the most traumatic sexual acts against that child. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with a grown man abusing.
Representative Knox, need you to take it down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to give you advance that I'm triggered right now. My PTSD is on high.
I
So
understand,
please forgive me about that.
but we still have to take it down.
I will bring it down. But here's why I'm so upset and emotional about it, Representative Boyd, is that a 9, 10, 11-year-old child can be violated in the most unfathomable way, sexually, be impregnated, and as you indicated, a child herself be forced. She has one trauma being raped. She has another trauma because she doesn't know who to go to. She has a third trauma because her body is going through changes that she doesn't understand or can appreciate. She has a fourth trauma that she now has to bear birth, something that a grown woman of an appropriate age can hardly handle. And not only that, she gives birth to a child that she has no knowledge or education about how to care for. We want to talk about trauma, lifelong trauma. Let's talk about a 9, 10, 12-year-old child, because I know a little something about that too. I know a little something about young girls giving birth to a child that they don't know how to care for. That's where you and I connect at. That's where we connect, where I talk about these so-called men. Somebody that the child knows, possibly an uncle, a neighbor. Can someone give me some more time, please?
Thank you, Rep. Knox. Chair Bacala.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I was getting with staff. I'm reading that this says terminate pregnancy as a result of an act constituting an offense under 15-541-24. And as I read that, it goes way beyond what the digest seems to indicate. A couple examples, prostitution is included in this section, so if a prostitute gets pregnant, they would be covered. A teacher who may have sexual relations with a student is in this section. So a teacher that gets pregnant as a result of raping a student might be covered within this section. And I want to ask our staff, am I reading this incorrectly on this long, long list that is not included in the digest? It's like 50 offenses in here. I mean, I'm just catching a few.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yes, Chair Bacala. So, sex offense is defined in RS 15-541, parentheses 24. And like you said, there is a litany of offenses that are encompassed within that definition. And as this bill is drafted within its four corners, it does seem to indicate that the termination of a pregnancy that results from an act from any of the offenses within the sex offense list would not be considered an abortion. I can't read those offenses if you would like, sir, but it is quite a lengthy list. But that's my impression, sir.
Well, am I right that say that, at least in your reading, that a teacher who rapes a student and is pregnant would be covered?
Chair Bacala, it's clear that anything within that particular statute and subpart, and you are correct, that digest does not encompass all of that and a reading of the proposed legislation with that statute clearly would indicate that the digest should encompass the entire statute subpart.
And that would include if someone who has AIDS gets pregnant, that may constitute a crime of intentional exposure to AIDS, so someone with AIDS may have clear passage in this statute. Now, I'm not picking on them. I'm just giving examples of the broad nature of 15.541, subsection 24. If y'all want to respond to that, you need to read it if you need to read it, but please do. I mean, this is not rape and incest. This is a lot of other stuff.
My response would be, Rep. Bacala, when I send in a request for what I intend my bill to be, I'm taking it at fact value that staff, these attorneys are drafting it correctly. My intent is simply to have an exception for rape and incest.
I believe that was your intent, but the bill is not.
Representative Boyd, there's nobody questioning your intent, and there are times. This is not the first bill that has been presented either here or by someone on the floor where clearly, whether it's from this committee or other committees, where there is a statute referenced. And unfortunately, I do think that there is sometimes an over-reliance on staff because we are all human and make mistakes. So please, I don't think anybody is questioning your intent. I think you have made your intent clear. However, the legislation as drafted is something quite broader than what you indicated that your intent was. So I don't know if you have.
How do we correct that?
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer my apology. I'm just catching this right now. If I had seen this earlier, I would have brought it to your attention.
Thank you.
Do this on the fly.
Representative Knox, did you want to speak on this issue?
A point of information, Madam Chair, if I may. Is it possible where I can get a copy of 15.441 for my own reference?
That would be 15.541.24. I am sure we can get you a copy.
And the other point of information is, as it stands now, is there a path where it can be amended so that we continue the discussion?
We can narrow it to be what it's supposed to be, put it in its proper posture.
Let's say this. We don't have any authors sitting in the wings right now. We have to be on the floor in less than a half an hour.
In the back too.
Oh, is she?
Yes.
If we want to take a minute, staff, I don't know if you have a recommendation or, let's go at ease for a moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Chair LaFleur is going to move for a voluntary deferral of HB 164 so they can work on the amendment. The realities are we have to be on the floor in a little over 20 minutes. We would not be able to finish this bill with the number of witnesses testifying both in support and opposition, and we certainly will not be able to reach the other 4 bills on a related topic. So we will be looking to schedule those bills next week. Unless Senator Cathy is listening and hears us, let's give him a moment for his bill that I do not think is going to be lengthy. And we will see everyone next week when these bills are rescheduled. Thank you so much.